Welcome to Lower Bucks Cablevision's interactive educational series, LBC Classroom. My name is Frank Champagne, the Chamonix School District's lead social studies teacher and host for this program, Hear Our Story and Never Forget. LBC Classroom, with the help of the Jewish War Veterans Post 697, has assembled on stage a panel that has lived and suffered through one of history's most horrific crimes, the Holocaust. First, we'll meet Willie Herbst. Mr. Herbst was driven from his home into work camps. He escaped and returned to Germany with the U.S. Army to free his people. Jack Block was a young, skilled tailor, one of the last Jews to receive a tailor's license. His job may have saved his life. David Tuck lived for 5 years in Auschwitz-Birkenau death camp, and he survived to tell his story. And finally, Jack Zeifman is a Polish Jew. His world became a nightmare when the Nazis invaded Poland. He was marked for death. Students joining us in the studio for this program are from Mrs. Weinblatt's class from Harry S. Truman High School. And also we're joined by students from Pennsbury High School. I'd like to begin the program by having our panelists tell us about their experiences during the late 1930s and up to their liberation in 1945. We're going to begin our first guest presentation with Mr. Herbst. How about telling us a little bit of your background and a little bit of your story?
Okay. First of all, I'd like to thank you for listening to me. And if you want to understand, as you know, I still have a German accent. I was born and raised in Germany in a little community named Zaberfeld, Stuttgart, near Stuttgart. It's a big city. I was the youngest of 13 children. We had in the community 900 people. So everybody knew each other, including we knew every pet in the village. We knew everybody else. We grew up together. I went to school in I was born in 21. I went to school in 28. And we went to school from 7 o'clock in the morning till 5 o'clock in the afternoon. We weren't as lucky as you are. And we had to be learning and learning whatever the teacher said, and if we didn't pick it up, we didn't get. That time you were still allowed to use the stick. The boys went over the desk and the girls put their hand out. We got plenty of it. I could never keep my mouth shut. So that was my problem. But what I'm trying to bring, we went to school, we knew everybody. I picked every morning on the way to school, one of the little girls, I carried a book, I had an eye on her, and she had, and I went to school that way. Until 1933, 34, it changed. My family was so well respected that when I worked in town, the people lived ahead. That was a respect for people. They respected well. Then it started little by little. I was not allowed to participate in history. Jews are not allowed. I was not. We built a swimming pool. My parents donated a lot of money to the pool to be opened up, and the first sign went up, Juden verboten. That means Jews were not allowed to go. Fine, make it short, I have a lot to say, so I might as well go to the next step. In 1935, I became, 34, I became bar mitzvah in a small community. We had to bring other Jews in, so we had maybe 10 people. But when I finished school, I wasn't allowed to go to high school. High school don't take Jews no more. I wasn't allowed to go to college. You're not allowed to go to college. what is a 13-year or 14-year-old boy going to do? Originally, I wanted to become a farmer, but they took our farm away. Somebody wanted our farm, so we had to give it to him. So I went into vocational, like apprenticeship. So where you find a Jewish business house what need apprentice. I finally landed up in Heidelberg in a bakery. And I took a apprentice there, and again, you had to go 3 days afternoon in the week to go to vocational school. The rest, we worked in the bakery. That was all fine. In 1935, Hitler came to Heidelberg. The bakery I worked for had a contract with a hotel. Maybe Hitler didn't know about it, the Nazis didn't know about it, but a Jewish bakery baked the bread and cake for the hotel. I made delivery, and Hitler was speaking and walking around. I was as close to him as you are. And when he put his hand up and hollered, "Heil Hitler," you didn't need no mic. I never saw a mic. His voice carried. Today I asked one question, or you can ask the question. Why didn't I take a knife or stick it into his guts? Or why didn't we poison him in the bakery? We were so brainwashed. Don't you dare do anything to that food. If they catch it, they're going to take the whole town, not just us, and destroy us. Did we know to do it anyhow? Okay, that went until 1936, 37. The first class baker in our was a German, Gentile. We wanted to go swimming. He says, okay, we go swimming. They took us in the Rhine, and I went out with him. I never had water deeper than my ankle in the little village. We were in a land to swim for. I didn't know what water, to go into water. He says, I'm all right, I take you. We went out. He took me middle of the river, and he let me go, and he hollered, go ahead, you goddamn Jew, learn how to swim. So, lucky enough for Chinese, Heidelberg has big colleges, and the college was there, and the student jumped in and saved my life. I took him, I went home, and never to this day I go into the water.
Thank you very much, Mr. Herbst. We're going to move on to the next guest, and we'll have an opportunity to talk more with you in just a second. Our next guest is Jack Block.
Okay.
You have a very interesting story, and it all revolves around the fact that you learned at a very early age how to be a tailor.
Right. I went to public school for 4 years, and then I started high school for 4 more years. It was called a gymnasium then. It worked out fine until 1933 when Hitler came to power, and you heard that story before. I could not keep on going into high school to learn anymore, so my father had a bakery, and he said, I have a friend in the next town. You go to see him and you learn to be a baker. But I did not want to be a baker. First of all, I knew my father got up every morning at 3, 4 o'clock and worked like a dog, and I said, I'm not going to do that. I wanted to be a tailor. So I worked for that baker for about 3 months, and then a new law came out that Jews are not to work for Gentiles. But in the meantime, I had ridden away to a big city about 150 kilometers away from my hometown to apply for a tailoring job. And about 2 weeks after I stopped working as a tailor, as a baker, a letter came. I should come. They would take me and teach me to be a tailor. So I was 14 years old then. I left home. My parents didn't know where I went to because I figured if I'm a failure, I don't want them to know. So I went to work for this tailor, and it lasted 4 years. Now the only reason I was allowed, because my boss was a Polish Jew, and Poland and Germany at that time were still friendly. That was before the 39 war. And at 1938, after the 4 years, when you finish learning, you have to pass a test to go to the next highest grade. And I applied for it, and I made it. And I didn't know the score or nothing. And I didn't know until much, much later. But they told me that I passed. Of course, a couple of months later, my boss had finished all the business. See, he worked for a lot of the Jews that immigrated from 1936, 37, and 38. At that time, Germany wanted all the Jews to leave that could. So we made a lot of clothes for them, and he did a lot of business. And at the end of 38, about August, he says, I'm closing up, I'm going to America. So I went home to stay with my parents. I had no place where to go. It was in August. In October, in November, I'm sure you heard of the Kristallnacht. And it happened, and all the men in my hometown, about 32 of them, the men, not the women, were arrested and taken to the next town. My former neighbor, who was the head of the SS, would not arrest my father and me because he thought he was a friend. But as it happened, a guy from the Hitler Youth missed us, and they came and picked my father and me up. And we went to the next town in a little motorcycle with a bivouac, and I'm sure you've seen some of the war pictures. On the way out of my hometown, he just took us, but as soon as we got to the edge of the hometown, he said to me, don't sit on your father's lap. Now you gotta imagine, my father's sitting there and I'm sitting on top of him. How I'm gonna sit? I said, and that's what I asked him. He said, I'll show you. And at that time I had more hair. He grabbed me by my hair and he held me like that till we got to the next town. But he had more in store for me, which I didn't know. They had just finished destroying the synagogue in that town. And they brought out the Torah scrolls. I don't know if you're familiar what it is. It's parchment paper where the Jews read every Saturday morning. And they took that and wrapped me around and put something on my head with a cap from a candle, and it had cow dirt in it, and they walked me through the town with the cow dirt on in my face. And that's when we went to meet the other Jews that were sent from there to the concentration camp. I don't know if I have any more time. Or
well, we'll get back to more of your story. One of the things that you heard two people say, and work with me if you will, in terms of it, while we're on television, but we're also in a classroom, if you will, and I don't think a teacher has ever had the opportunity of being able to tell a story and then say, oh, and by the way, tell us exactly what happened at such and such a place. And this is a real unique experience for a teacher. But you've been hearing something over the past few minutes that may have changed a little bit of your perception of why the Jews. And